Hey, welcome. So, you've got that server-side scripting quiz coming up, right? Well, you are in exactly the right place. Think of this as our own personal study session. We're going to break down how a server actually works, why we use things like Express, and how it all fits together. Basically, all the key stuff you'll need to explain with total confidence. Yeah, I know that feeling. Especially when it's an oral quiz where you have to explain code out loud. It's one thing to make the code work, but it's a completely different ballgame to explain why it works and how all the pieces connect. And that's exactly what we're going to focus on today. We're not just looking at random snippets of code, we are building the story behind them. We're going to zero in on the purpose of each tool so you can clearly explain what's happening from the second a request leaves the browser to the moment a response comes flying back. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with the most basic question of all. You type a website into your browser, you hit enter. What is actually going on behind the scenes? How does some computer halfway across the world know what to send back to your screen? The answer, of course, is a server. And you know what? The best way to understand something is to just build it. So that's what we're going to do. Create a super simple web server using only the basic tools that come with Node.js. So check this out. It really doesn't take much code to get a basic server up and running. First, we require the HTTP module. That's built right into Node. It's our starter toolkit. Then we use http.createServer. This thing basically just listens for any web requests and gives us two super important objects to play with. Rec, which is all the info about the incoming request, and res, which is our tool for sending a response back. And finally, server.listen just tells it what port to keep an ear out on. Okay, but we hit our first problem almost right away. Let's say I go into the code, change the message I'm sending, save the file, and then refresh my browser. Nothing. Nothing changes. That's because the server only knows about the code from when it first started up. So for every single change, I have to stop the server and restart it. That's going to get real old real fast. And this is exactly why we need better tools for development. So instead of typing nodeapp.js, we use nodemon-app.js. Nodemon is this awesome little utility that just watches our files. The second we hit save, boom, it automatically restarts the server for us. Problem solved. So here's the key takeaway for your quiz. Nodemon isn't part of Node.js itself. It is a development tool that we install to make our lives easier. It just speeds up the whole process by getting rid of that boring manual restart step. So if you're asked, that's the answer. It saves time and makes your workflow way smoother. Okay, great. Our workflow is better. But now we've got a much bigger issue. Real websites have more than one page, right? So how do we send back different stuff for the homepage versus, say, an about page? How do we handle all those different URLs? Well, if we're only using the basic HTTP stuff, our solution is pretty clunky. We have to write this giant if-else-if block where we're manually checking the rec.url for every single possibility. I mean, just imagine a site with dozens of pages. This code would be an absolute nightmare to read, let alone maintain. And this right here is a classic moment for any developer. When you find yourself writing code that's super repetitive and hard to follow, it's a huge sign that there's probably a smarter tool or a better pattern out there that solves this exact problem. There has to be a cleaner way to handle all these routes. And here it is. This is the big aha moment. On the left, you see that messy if-else block. And on the right, the clean, simple beauty of Express.js. Instead of manually checking things, we have these nice, clear methods like app.get. This is exactly why frameworks like Express were invented. They give us a structured, battle-tested way to solve common problems so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time. So what is Express really? It's a framework. That's the key word. It doesn't replace Node.js. It's a set of tools built on top of Node.js. It takes that powerful but kind of low-level HTTP module and gives us a much simpler, more organized way to build our server. And it often uses other little tools called middleware, like one called Body Parser, that helps it understand data coming in from a form. So why bother with a framework? Well, just look at this list. It simplifies routing. That's our app.get and app.post. It handles common tasks. It gives our code a consistent structure, which is so important when you're working on a team. And it helps us avoid common mistakes, because tons of people in the community have already figured out the best ways to do things. So let's follow the journey of a request using this diagram. A request comes into our Express app. It could be for a web page, or it could be sending some data from a form. Express acts like a traffic cop, Or a switchboard operator. It looks at the URL and what kind of request it is, and then directs it to the exact block of code that we wrote to handle that specific thing before sending a response back out.
And this slide shows how that diagram connects to the real code. When we write app.get, we're basically telling that switchboard operator, hey, if a GET request shows up for the homepage, run this specific function. This is the R in CRUD. We're reading data. Now, if we were creating something new, like from a contact form, we'd use app.post for that same URL. That's the C for create. Express gives us a specific word for each job.
This comparison table just nails the difference, doesn't it? Creating a server, defining a route, sending a response, every single step is just so much more direct and readable in Express. It's not just about writing less code, it's about making your code say what you mean. I want to get data. I want to post data. It's way clearer.
All right, you've got the concepts, you see the why. Now let's actually practice how you'd say this out loud. I'm going to throw a couple of questions at you, just like you might hear in your quiz. Okay, picture it. You're in the quiz, and your instructor asks you this. Just take a second. Think back to that messy if-else block versus the clean app.get. You know this. Here's a really solid way to answer. You can say something like, Express is a framework for Node.js, and its main purpose is to make building web servers way easier. For example, instead of writing a huge if-else block to handle different URLs, Express gives us simple methods like app.get for reading a page and app.post for submitting data. See? That shows you know what it is, why it's useful, and you even have an example.
All right, next up. This question is all about the tools you use during development.
Perfect. The answer is all about the why. It's not just what NodeMon does, it's why it's so useful. It saves us time and gets rid of a really annoying manual step in our workflow. It's clear, it's to the point, and it shows you understand your own process. Okay, this is the big one. They put a piece of code in front of you and just ask you to explain it. No pressure, let's just break it down line by line and think about how you'd tell the story of this code.
You just walk them through it nice and easy. Okay, so first we import the Express library so we can use it. Then we create our main app object. After that, we set up a rule. For any GET request that comes to the main homepage, we're going to run this function that sends back hello world. And finally, we start the server and tell it to listen for requests on port 3000. And if they ask a follow-up like, what if a form was submitted there? You're ready. You'd say, then I'd add an app.post route and I'd need middleware like body parser to read the form data. See? You're not just reading code. You're explaining the why and showing you know how all the pieces fit together. You've got this. Good luck.